Picture this, a bustling city, but not the one you're familiar with today. Imagine the air thick with smoke, the streets filled with the sound of clanging metal, and the hum of machines running non-stop. This is Manchester in the 1850s, the heart of the Industrial Revolution. Now, take a deep breath and feel the weight of this new world. The city, once a modest market town, has exploded into an industrial giant. This is a city built on the backs of workers, powered by steam and coal, and driven by machines that have replaced the old ways of life. The world around you is changing at an unbelievable pace, and this transformation is nothing short of astonishing. It's not just the factories, the trains, and the mills that define Manchester. It's the people, the men, women, and children who power the engines of progress, enduring hardships unimaginable to most. In the next few moments, we're going to uncover the untold story of Manchester, the city that set the stage for the modern world. You'll see the highs and the lows, the breakthroughs, and the human costs that came with them. Stick with us as we reveal how this city became Britain's workshop, shaping not just England, but the entire globe. And, by the end of this journey, you'll never look at the modern world in the same way. Scene 1. The Rise of Manchester. In the early 1800s, Manchester was a small market town, little more than a quiet corner of Lancashire. But this sleepy town was about to be shaken to its core by a tidal wave of change, the Industrial Revolution. As the century unfolded, steam power and mechanization transformed Manchester. The introduction of steam engines to power mills revolutionized the cotton industry, and Manchester quickly became the heart of the global textile market. By the 1850s, the city was home to over 300,000 people, many of whom had moved here in search of work. The rapid growth of the city was fueled by the textile industry, which was dominated by cotton manufacturing. But it was more than just cotton. Manchester became a hub of innovation, as inventors and engineers like James Watt and George Stephenson changed the world with their groundbreaking inventions. The rise of the factory system, which began in the late 18th century, drove the growth of Manchester. Factories replaced smaller workshops, and machines powered by steam engines allowed production to be ramped up like never before. But this was not a smooth transition. As the city became a center of industry, the pace of life changed, and the social fabric was stretched to its limits. You can feel the energy of the city during the 1850s, like a machine itself, its gears constantly turning, with little time for rest. But behind the industrial buzz, there was a darker side to this transformation. With the rise of factories came overcrowded living conditions, disease, and exploitation. The workers who powered the mills, mines, and factories endured harsh conditions that would forever change their lives. Scene 2. The factory system and the harsh realities of work. At the heart of Manchester's Industrial Revolution is the factory system. Machines, powered by steam, allow goods to be produced on a scale never seen before. But this rise in production doesn't come without its costs. Factory workers, including women and children, are the backbone of Manchester's economy. The mills run 12 to 16 hours a day, and workers, many of them as young as 5 years old, toil away in the harsh conditions. The sound of spinning looms, the hiss of steam engines, and the constant clatter of machinery fill the air. The work is fast, dangerous, and exhausting. For women and children, factory work is grueling. While men are often employed as skilled laborers, women and children are brought in as cheap, unskilled labor. The hours are long, and the pay is low, but the work is seen as a necessary evil to support families. Children. But the factory system isn't just about labor, it's about power. Factory owners, known as the captains of industry, enjoy immense wealth and influence. They own the machines, the land, and the raw materials. While they profit from the labor of their workers, the workers live in squalid conditions, often forced to live in overcrowded housing near the factories. The wealth disparity between the factory owners and the workers becomes glaringly apparent, with the industrialists living in grand homes, while the workers struggle to survive. This divide, the exploitation of the working class for the benefit of the industrial elite, will fuel political and social movements throughout the 19th century. The rise of trade unions, the push for better working conditions, and the fight for workers' rights will define the social landscape of Manchester and Britain as a whole. By the mid-1800s, Manchester has become a rapidly growing, thriving industrial hub. However, the rapid expansion of factories and the influx of workers have created a social landscape where the rich and the poor live in stark contrast. The working class, composed mainly of factory labourers, forms the backbone of Manchester's economy. These men, women, and children are the ones who work the long hours in the mills and factories, but they are often invisible in the eyes of the wealthy industrialists who profit from their labour. The contrast between the lavish lifestyles of the factory owners and the grueling, dangerous lives of the workers couldn't be more pronounced. But in this working class population, something new is beginning to take shape. As more people move to Manchester from rural areas in search of work, a new sense of community emerges. The Industrial Revolution is not just about machines. It's about people coming together to work, fight, and survive. Factory workers begin to form communities, living in the same cramped neighborhoods and enduring the same hardships. Over time, this unity leads to the rise of labor movements and political activism. In the face of injustice, workers start to organize, demanding better wages, better conditions, and a better future. The 1830s and 1840s bring about the first organized attempts at political and social reform, with movements like Chartism, which pushes for universal male suffrage and better working conditions. Though these movements don't fully achieve their goals in the short term, they lay the groundwork for future social reforms. The industrial working class in Manchester, while enduring hardship, is beginning to realize its collective power. Scene 4. Overcrowding, disease, and the struggle for public health. As Manchester grows into a booming industrial city, the challenges of overcrowding, poor sanitation, and disease become a constant reality for the working class. The rapid pace of urbanization has left the city's infrastructure struggling to keep up. Factory workers live in poorly constructed housing in slums that are overcrowded and lacking proper sanitation. Disease spreads quickly in these unsanitary conditions. The 19th century sees numerous outbreaks of cholera, typhoid, and tuberculosis. The lack of sewage systems and clean water exacerbates the situation. The Thames, once a vital trade route and source of fresh water, has become a dumping ground for industrial waste, raw sewage, and chemicals from the mills. The public health crisis in Manchester during the Industrial Revolution is severe. Disease claims the lives of thousands, and the working-class neighborhoods bear the brunt of the suffering. In 1849, a major cholera outbreak strikes the city, claiming hundreds of lives in just a few months. The combination of overcrowding, lack of sanitation, and poor medical care makes Manchester a hotbed for disease. However, the dire health conditions also bring about reform. Social reformers, engineers, and public health advocates begin to push for improvements in sanitation and housing. Figures like Edwin Chadwick, a public health official, and Florence Nightingale, a nurse and social reformer, begin advocating for clean water, sewage systems, and better living conditions for the urban poor. Though progress is slow, these reforms begin to improve public health and help manage the spread of disease. The establishment of proper sewage systems and the development of cleaner water sources in the later years of the 19th century will have a profound impact on the lives of Manchester's residents. Scene 5. The rise of organised labour and the demand for reform. As the 19th century progresses, the social and economic tensions within Manchester's industrial landscape intensify. The rapidly growing working class is beginning to organise, demanding better wages, shorter working hours, and safer conditions. The rise of organised labour becomes an essential part of Manchester's industrial story, and the fight for workers' rights gains momentum. In the early days of industrialisation, workers have no voice in their working conditions. They are seen as cogs in the industrial machine, their labour essential but undervalued. However, as the factories and mills expand, so does the collective power of the workers. The rise of labour unions becomes a critical part of this transformation. Trade unions, once illegal or restricted, begin to emerge in the mid-1800s, giving workers the opportunity to organise and demand better treatment. These early unions, though small and often unrecognised by the factory owners, serve as a foundation for future worker movements across the country. In the wake of early labour strikes, workers begin to push for policies such as the regulation of working hours, child labour laws, and improved safety standards. The Chartist movement, which arose in the 1830s and 1840s, lays the groundwork for the workers' movement in Manchester. Although the Chartists don't achieve their goals of universal suffrage and full political rights for the working class, they spark the conversation about inequality, democracy, and labour rights. These movements will gain strength in the coming decades as the factory owners and industrialists face increasing pressure to reform. The story of organised labour in Manchester is not just about strikes or protests. It's about the birth of the modern workers' rights movement, where individuals and communities come together to demand justice in a world that increasingly seems indifferent to their suffering. Scene 6. The cultural awakening and the intellectual climate. While the Industrial Revolution is often seen as a story of economic and technological change, it is also a time of intellectual and cultural transformation. As Manchester becomes the heart of Britain's industrial landscape, it also becomes a centre for thought, culture, and social reform. The rapid growth of the city and its industrial prosperity attract intellectuals, writers, and social reformers who challenge the existing order. Among them is Friedrich Engels, who spends time in Manchester observing the condition of the working class and publishing his famous work, The Condition of the Working Class in England, in 1845. Engels' critique of the social inequality caused by industrialization resonates not just in Manchester, but across Europe, influencing the rise of socialism and labour movements worldwide. At the same time, writers like Charles Dickens, Elizabeth Gaskell, and George Eliot give voice to the working class in their novels, highlighting the hardships and injustices faced by the poor. Gaskell, a native of Manchester, writes North and South, 1854. a novel that explores the tensions between the industrial North and the agrarian South, focusing on the struggles of the working class and the social divide between the mill owners and their workers. Dickens's Hard Times, 1854, also critiques the dehumanizing effects of industrialization, painting a vivid picture of factory life. This intellectual awakening during the Industrial Revolution is a reflection of the social changes that are taking place. The harsh realities of factory life, along with the growing disparity between the rich and poor, push writers and philosophers to grapple with questions of justice, equality, and the role of industry in shaping human society. Manchester becomes a symbol of this intellectual and cultural transformation, where industry and ideas intersect. The city's rise as an industrial giant is mirrored by its emergence as a centre for social and political thought. As Manchester continues to develop, its intellectual climate becomes an integral part of the broader industrial landscape. Scene 7. The environmental toll of industrialization. While Manchester's industrial growth drives economic prosperity, it also takes a heavy toll on the environment. The city's transformation into an industrial powerhouse brings with it a profound shift in the landscape, both physically and environmentally. The air, once fresh and open, is now thick with smoke from factory chimneys, and the river, once a source of life, is choked with waste and pollution. As factories expand, so does the environmental degradation. Coal, the fuel that powers the engines of progress, becomes a major source of air pollution. The sky above Manchester is perpetually covered in smog, as black smoke pours from the countless chimneys that dominate the skyline. The soot from these factories settles on buildings, streets, and the lungs of every citizen. The once clear waters of the River Irwell and the Thames are now filled with chemicals, factory runoff, and human waste. The environmental cost of industrialization is seen in the pollution that affects the health of the city's residents. Respiratory diseases, including tuberculosis, become rampant among the working class, who spend their days in the factories and live in the smog-filled neighborhoods. The lack of proper sanitation and the contamination of water sources lead to frequent outbreaks of cholera and other waterborne diseases, claiming thousands of lives. The environmental challenges faced by Manchester during the Industrial Revolution are not isolated to the city alone. The effects of industrialization, the pollution, the destruction of natural landscapes, and the overuse of resources set the stage for future discussions on environmental protection, sustainability, and the human cost of unchecked progress. While the Industrial Revolution brought with it enormous economic growth and technological advances, it also exposed the darker side of progress, the environmental toll that comes with industrialization. As Manchester continues to grow, the need for environmental reform and better urban planning becomes more urgent. But the effects of industrial pollution will last long after the factories cease to churn. Scene 8. The rise of suburbs and changing urban living. As Manchester expands, its middle and upper classes begin to move out of the city's industrial heart into newly developed suburban areas. The rise of the railway network allows wealthier individuals to live further from the city centre, yet still commute to work in the factories, offices, and banks. The development of suburbs marks a significant shift in urban living, as the city's wealthy seek refuge from the pollution and overcrowding of the industrial districts. The middle class, many of whom work in administrative or managerial roles in the factories, begin to move into newly constructed suburban neighborhoods. These areas are quieter, cleaner, and more spacious than the cramped, smoke-filled streets of central Manchester. The rise of suburban living reflects a growing division between the classes. The industrialists and wealthy middle class can afford to escape the filth and pollution of the city, while the working class remains stuck in the heart of the industrial machine. The development of suburbs also reflects the changing nature of Manchester's economy. As the factory system becomes more established, the demand for skilled workers and managers grows. These workers need places to live, and the suburbs become a desirable option for them. However, the cost of living in these new areas is often too high for the working class, who remain in the city's slums, facing the harsh realities of industrial life. The rise of suburbs in Manchester is just one of the many ways in which the Industrial Revolution reshapes society. The growth of the middle class, the expansion of urban areas, and the rise of new forms of transportation all contribute to a fundamental shift in how people live, work, and interact with their environment. Scene 9. The legacy of Manchester's Industrial Revolution. Manchester's industrial boom of the 1850s, while marked by incredible technological progress and economic growth, also serves as a reminder of the complexities of the Industrial Revolution. The city's transformation into a global industrial centre came at a great human cost. Workers were exploited, the environment was ravaged, and social inequalities deepened. Yet, Manchester's story is not solely one of exploitation and hardship. It is also a story of innovation, resilience, and change. The workers who powered the mills and factories laid the foundation for the labour movements and social reforms that would follow in the years to come. The technological breakthroughs that were born in Manchester, the steam engine, the factory system, the railway, would fuel global industrialization and change the world forever. That Manchester's legacy is also a reminder that progress must come with responsibility. The city's rapid industrialization led to environmental degradation, poor working conditions, and social injustice. As the city looks toward the future, the lessons learned from its industrial past will continue to shape its development. As we look back on Manchester's transformation during the Industrial Revolution, it's clear that this period of history was both a time of immense progress and profound challenge. The rise of industry, the growth of the working class, and the rise of new technologies set the stage for the modern world. But the story of Manchester also reminds us of the human cost of industrial progress. The workers who powered the factories and mills of Manchester laid the groundwork for the modern world, but they also endured unimaginable hardships. The city's environmental challenges and social inequalities provide a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked progress. The Industrial Revolution changed everything. It shaped not only Manchester, but the entire world. And its legacy continues to influence how we think about work, society, and the environment today.